Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to our training. Today's training topic is going to be about prompting. And my name is Mike, and it's nice to see everyone here this morning. So let's continue, please. So, what is a prompt? What is a prompt? Well, a prompt are temporary supplementary antecedent stimuli used to occasion a correct response in the presence of the natural SD that will eventually control the behavior. So, what does that mean? I'm glad. That was the point of that. So what is that? So many times we want to add a stimuli to the environment that will cause our VIPs to have an appropriate response, right? Maybe we're teaching hand washing and I may do what to encourage an appropriate hand washing with my VIP. What can I do in that occasion? Go ahead. I could model. Great answer. I could model that skill. I could do the skill myself, show the VIP how to do the skill in hopes that what will happen? That they will be able to complete the task. What's another example of a prompt? Go ahead. Verbal. A verbal prompt. And what might that look like for hand washing? Hey bud, we gotta go wash our hands. Yeah, right. And then I'm able to go wash my hands, right? So the idea behind this is I'm adding a response or a behavior of my own that will evoke a behavior that I'd like to see from my VIP. So important for teaching that I could have a response of my own that would generate a behavior from my VIP. If I had someone who didn't know the skill really at all, they'd never really been around people that hand washed, and I was teaching the skill for the first time to someone, what is the most intrusive of prompts that I might use? Full physical. Full physical, which means what? Hand over hand, right? That I'm going to take their hands. Of course, I'm going to ask their permission. Hey, can I see your hands? And I'm going to have a strong relationship with this VIP first. And I'm going to ask them to see their hands so I could show them by manipulating their hands in a very gentle way that this is how you wash your hands, right? And then after they're done, I'm going to provide reinforcement in the form of praise, encouragement. Hey, your hands smell great. Hey, that's going to keep you free from getting sick. Great job washing your hands, right? I'm going to provide that reinforcement, which means it's going to be much more likely to see again in the future when I reinforce that behavior. So does anyone have any, and that's just a response prompt. There's another, and the response prompt, before I move on, is operated directly on the response or a behavior to cue a correct response. So like we said, that we're having a behavior of our own to cue a behavior from the VIP we're working with, right? So that's the response prompt. The three main forms that we mentioned: verbal instruction, that we're going to provide that verbal response, that verbal prompt. Modeling is another one that Deanna mentioned, that we're going to model the behavior ourselves. And physical guidance, which is that full physical prompt that we suggested as well. So great answers, great examples, exactly right. Another example of prompts that we could use are stimulus prompts. And they operate directly on the antecedent task stimuli to cue a correct response. And we'll get into those ideas a little bit later in the training. The first set of ideas here are going to be about response prompts. All right, let's move on, please. Does anyone have any questions? So there's risks associated with using prompts that we should be very aware of when working with our VIPs. And what are these risks? Well, practitioners must be aware that there's a risk of prompt dependency with the application of response and stimulus, using response and stimulus prompts. This occurs due to a failure to transfer stimulus control from the prompt to the desired stimuli or the natural cue, right? After I use the bathroom, the sink signals to me to wash my hands. I don't need an additional prompt in the bathroom to wash my hands. So my behavior is generalized. I've learned that behavior a long time ago. And the problem with prompting is, of course, at first it generalizes, it promotes the behavior we'd like to see. But the problem, if we keep using a prompt over and over and over again with our VIPs, is they become dependent on that prompt. So not only are they going to, that the sink now signals that it's time to wash our hands, but they kind of wait for us to provide a verbal prompt or a model prompt or a full physical prompt, right? So this is a big problem with using prompts that we need to be aware of. And there's ways that we could remedy that. And we have different procedures for remedying prompt dependency that we need to be aware of. And the first word in the definition of a prompt is what? It's temporary, right? So we need to make sure that we're not continuously using prompts over and over again with someone if it's not needed. We need to look to fade our prompts. So ABA clinicians establish stimulus control with the frequent differential reinforcement of behaviors in the presence of absence of the ST condition. So what does that mean? Does anyone have any ideas? How could we differentially reinforce a more independent response?
Like giving praise when they do it without a prompt.
Yeah, we could provide more reinforcement for times they are more independent, right? We could provide a higher quality of reinforcement for times that they don't require my prompting, right? And we'll talk about that idea a little bit more as we continue. Go ahead. So an SD just signals that reinforcement is available. So what that means is, hey, when I drive by McDonald's and I see that open sign to me in the golden arches, that signals that reinforcement's available, that food is available at that restaurant. So when I'm working with a VIP, if I'm in front of the sink and it's time to wash our hands, if our hands are dirty, the sink signals that reinforcement's available, that I could use the sink to clean my hands. Okay, in the simplest terms, the SD is kind of signals that there's some type of reinforcement available. We ourselves are SDs to other people. When we come on the day program floor and our VIPs see us, what do? They just, is it just greet us?
No, they hug.
We signal that reinforcement's available, that good times are available, right? That we're going to provide all that fun reinforcement that they enjoy. So that is what an SD is. An SD that just lets us know that reinforcement is available. We are SDs. The open sign's an SD. Everything we encounter in the environment is an SD. Okay? Great question. Any other questions? Okay. So we need to look to fade our prompting immediately. As I'm working with VIPs and I'm using prompting, come on in. Welcome.
Hello.
As I'm working with VIPs, I need to make sure that I am feeding my prompting, that I am thinking about not requiring or not using a prompt forever with someone because they will become prompt dependent. And I am robbing their ability to become an independent person. How many times do we see people, and with the best intentions, answer questions for our VIPs? We'll see someone come on the floor and we'll say, hey, how you doing? And we have a staff member that prompts the answer from our VIPs, right? That will prompt that answer. And we're coming from the best of places. But guys, that is robbing their behavior for them to respond independently and have a creative response and to build a skill that's very important for socialization. So withhold that prompt is what I'm asking you guys to do. Withhold that prompt when working with our VIPs to encourage a more independent response. And these 4 ideas are 4 ways that we can think about fading our prompts when working with our VIPs. So there's 4 different methods that we could think about to help our folks become less prompt dependent. And we're going to talk about each one. So most to least prompting, and this is our prompting hierarchy. And if you look, we have a full physical on the bottom, which is the most intrusive prompt, right? Where we are taking someone's hands and or whatever and manipulating them to engage in a behavior that we'd like to see. So this is the most intrusive of all prompts. And what we want to do is think about fading our prompts by going to the most intrusive prompt. And this is for people, this method is used for people that don't know this behavior at all. If we're teaching a brand new skill that the person doesn't have much knowledge or experience with, I might choose most to least prompting, where I'm going to first start with a full physical prompt, and then I'm going to slowly fade it over time. I'm going to take it to a partial physical prompt. So the same idea with the hand washing. At first, when I'm teaching a VIP to wash their hands, I may take their hands and manipulate their hands to wash. The next time, if I want to, and after a few trials of this, teaching that, I'm going to be like, time to fade my prompting, time to encourage a more independent response. So what do I do if I did a partial physical prompt? What might I do here?
You do it.
Okay, so we could try that. And we could go to a model prompt and we could say, hey, we're going to try a model prompt to see if that'll generate the behavior. And now I'm moving in the right direction. Do you see what I mean? What would be a great example? What would be another example of fading my prompt here? Using any of these ideas. I mean, we were on partial physical. What can that look like in washing hand behavior?
If you're doing full hand over hand, if you're moving to partial, you could even just do the elbow, move the elbow forward to washing hands.
Guide the elbow underneath the water might be a way that I could fade this physical prompt to a lesser intrusive prompt. And as I move up, I could slowly fade my prompts this way, where I'm starting off with the full physical. And as they're contacting reinforcement, as I'm generating the behavior I like, I slowly fade these prompts. And then maybe we get to a point where we're like, hey, time to wash our hands, and the person is able to complete that skill on their own. And then bam, we try to fade it to the natural cue that when they're in front of the sink, they will engage in that behavior. Right? And it's important that we are constantly thinking about fading our prompts. Where was I yesterday with this person, and where can I move it today? And over here's just an example. And they use the same pyramid structure here, but they actually outline the behaviors that they'd like to see. And I love our BSCs to do this. So this is for clapping hands behavior on the right, bless you, on the right hand side. So this is clapping hands. So if I'm teaching someone to clap their hands, I might start, and they have no experience clapping their hands before, and I might choose this most to least procedure. I might start by doing a hand over hand to clap. And we have a few trials of that, maybe 4 or 5 trials. And now I'm going to fade my prompt to hold learners' wrists or forearms. Then now I'm going to try this and see if it generates the behavior. Then I'm going to move to tapping elbows. Then I model the behavior. I might give a verbal clap hands, and that's kind of the natural cue, clap. So I might say clap, and then it will generate the behavior. So this is a great way to fade our prompts as we're working with VIPs and not kind of stay where we always will be, to think, hey, I'm going to try to fade this prompt. Another way to do this is to use a differential reinforcement strategy. So when we're using this, as I'm having a more independent response, I'm providing a higher level of reinforcement. So maybe if I see, if I'm at kind of partial physical, and now we see the behavior from a model or a gesture, I'm going to provide over-the-top praise and reinforcement for that VIP for completing a more independent response, and maybe have a moderate amount of reinforcement for a full physical, right? Where now I'm going to go over the top with my praise, encouragement, and reinforcement for a more independent response. And that's also a way to fade our prompting. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you guys have any questions about the most to least procedure? Okay. So the next one is least to most, right? Just the opposite. And maybe we're working with the VIP that we're new to. Maybe we don't know what prompting level they're at. Maybe we need to kind of see where they are. So I might, instead of starting with that full physical, I'll be like, hey, this person has some experience clapping their hands. I don't need to start with the full physical. They've been around and they kind of seen people clap. We've seen them do it once or twice before. We might want to see it more often. I'm not sure where this person's at. So I could start with the least to most. And what I do is I test. I start with the verbal and I'll say, what? wash your hands, or clap your hands, or whatever behavior we're talking about, and see if that generates the behavior that I'd like to see. And if it doesn't, I'm going to slowly and systematically move up on this pyramid hierarchy. Where then I see a model, and then I'm going to model it myself and see if the VIP engages in the behavior. And if they do, this is where I'm going to start from now on. And then as I'm moving forward, I could fade this away very easily. I know exactly where to start. So I don't kind of start at the very beginning with someone that's already further along. Does that make sense? So I kind of, using least to most, the way I like to use it, is I start seeing if they could do it naturally. When we approach the sink, can they do it on their own? And if they don't, I'm going to think about these verbal, model, and slowly move up the pyramid here, or move down, I guess, to see if it generates the response. And that's where I'm going to start with my VIP. And then I'm going to use most to least again. So if I'm at light physical, that's where I'm going to start fading my prompts away again. Any questions? Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. So another example of a prompt fading procedure is time delay. And this is kind of a simpler method that I like to use. And what do we do with time delay? Well, the time between the SD and the prompt is increased over time. So if I have a prompt that reliably generates the behavior, and often I see this with verbal prompts, right? So like someone's very dependent on receiving verbal directions from us to generate a behavior. And we're kind of at that last step from verbal to natural cue. And we're kind of stuck there. What I might decide to do is increase the time before I give that prompt. So at first, when I'm working with the person, I'll say, I'll give them a verbal prompt a few times to get the behavior I'd like. And now it's like the 5th time I'm with them. I'm going to wait 5 to 7 seconds now before I deliver that prompt to see if they'll engage in that behavior on their own. Right? I'm going to slowly increase the time before I give that prompt. And over time, as I generate the behavior more and more independently, I'm going to extend it to a point where it fades away entirely. And the idea behind this is I could use the same prompt. I don't need to change my prompting. I don't need to think about, I need to keep reducing my prompting. I could use the same prompt that generates the behavior. And I'm just increasing the time before I offer it. Does that make sense? So it's a great strategy that I like to use, especially if I know that a certain prompt generates a behavior that I'd like. So choose a prompt that is reliable in evoking the behavior, or reliable to that we'd see the behavior. Any questions about time delay?
Not really a question, it's more of a statement.
Please.
I found that it has to be consistent with the time delay across like all people working with the VIP.
Mm-hmm.
Because if one person does 5 seconds and one person does 10, then he's going to not necessarily do it, or look like he's gonna look for a prompt sooner if you're not consistent across the board.
And all of these strategies should be consistent, right? They only work if we are being consistent with them. And so with the time delay, most to least, least to most, all of this needs to be consistent. If we have one staff or VSC doing a full physical, when we are at a gesture prompt, well, we're kind of working backwards. We're kind of making that person more dependent on our prompting rather than making them less dependent. So it's important that we're all talking and be like, hey, I could tell this person to wash their hands and they're likely to do it. You don't need to be doing a hand over hand with this person. They could do it more independently, and we should really be focused on that. And that's one of the main goals for all our VIPs, is to become as independent as possible and less reliant on us, right? And in turn, it makes our job easier to not have to do all these intrusive prompts with our VIPs. So these prompts need to be super temporary. Right off the bat, I'm thinking about fading them. All right, let's continue, please. So graduated guidance is another example of how we could fade prompts. And this is a prompting technique which physical guidance is provided only when needed and fade it as immediately as possible. So if I'm watching a VIP complete a task, I might stand behind them. And if they're struggling with a certain step, I'll come in and provide hand over hand assistance, maybe. And once they start accomplishing the task, I'm going to fade away immediately. If they need help again, I'm stepping in again and I'm helping out, doing what I need to do to generate appropriate behaviors. Once they start doing it on their own again, I'm stepping out and fading away. Provide physical guidance as needed, but immediately fade assistance per behavior. So as the person starts to respond more independently, it starts to engage in the appropriate response that we like to see, we're going to fade away as quickly as possible. Begin with shadowing the learner closely and recommend to prompt from behind. So prompting from behind is just, they're kind of focused in front and we're behind manipulating. And that's just a great fading strategy right off the bat. All right, there's one more slide about this. Increase distance by gradually changing location of physical prompting, then proximity of prompter. So as I'm working with the VIP, at first I'm very close to them. As they start learning the skill more independently, I'm stepping away. I'm stepping away. I'm stepping away. And now I might be across the room and they're engaging the behavior more independently than before. Okay? And I might be thinking about feeding my prompts as well. So at first they need a lot of they have a lot of great song. So at first, they might need a lot of hand over hand assistance. They might need a lot of physical guidance. But as they start picking up the skill, they might need only verbal. And I could stand further away and offer that verbal prompting as I'm standing away. Then I might be many steps away and having them engage in more independent response. And if they start struggling, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm going to swoop in. I'm going to swoop in and get back to it and then fade away. Right? I was thinking about swooping.
I was letting someone else answer. It actually reminds me of one of our VIPs at the gym. And her space between other VIPs, other people. So other public people. So she loves to invade boundaries. But she has decreased that space so the staff had to be with her at all times. But then as she slowly learned that she couldn't invade other personal space, the staff was allowed to move their space away from her. So now that the staff can actually sit at the front, or even if they want to go on another treadmill while she's on a treadmill, they don't have to be at the treadmill where they're afraid that she's going to get on a treadmill with someone else in a way. Because that's what she used to do. She used to stand and stare at someone to get off the treadmill. And she doesn't do that anymore. So they did spatial fading.
Nice, yeah. So yeah, the graduated guidance,
but
right?
There were times exactly like you said.
And if there's a problem, they're going to swoop
Yep,
in.
exactly.
And then fade away, right? And that's the idea here. And we're going to provide a lot of... So guys, not only are we feeding our responses, we're feeding our intrusiveness working with our VIPs right off the bat. I'm not going to wait a year before I start doing these prompt fading procedures with my VIP. As soon as they start to have success, I am looking to fade those prompts immediately. They need to be super temporary because people become prompt dependent. And we see this on the floor working with our adults. Right? We see that we don't get an independent response unless we offer our prompts, right? So it's great they're engaging in that behavior, but it's so important that we are constantly thinking about ways to fade these prompts to help our VIPs become more independent. The other side of it is providing a lot of reinforcement for a more independent response. As that person engages in a behavior that's more independent, and the way I think about it is and why do people become prompt dependent, do you think?
They want that reassurance.
Okay, they want that reassurance. What are we doing to the behavior when we offer our assistance? Well, we hope it will lead to reinforcement. We're making it easier. So when we offer prompting, we are making a behavior less effortful. So why would the person do it on their own if we're always going to provide our help? I'm going, okay, become lazy, right? They're going to be very reliant on our help, on our prompting, which is great at first to generate behaviors that we'd like to see. But we don't want them to become so reliant on us that they always need our prompting, they always need our assistance. We want them to do these skills on their own. So the prompt makes a behavior less effortful. So we need to make sure we dish out a lot of reinforcement for a more independent response. Where I'm going to give $100 for a more independent response, and I'm going to give $1 for a prompted response. And what do I mean by dollars? I mean that's my vocal reinforcement. My vocal reinforcement for a more independent response is $1 million better than my response when it's prompted from my VIPs. And what am I doing? I'm tipping the weights, where my VIP will engage in a more effortful behavior because they know that reinforcement will be much better if they do. Do you guys have any questions about that idea? And we'll get some shades in here. I see everyone getting blasted. Let's get on it. Anyone from my office too. I feel the pain.
While you're looking for that's like 5 years too, you're fine.
Yeah, we apologize for that. Go back one time. Did I miss anything? Oh, good to use for behavior chains, graduated guidance. Allows for some more flexibility, right? I don't need to kind of think of the pyramid as much when I'm doing this. I swoop in when they need help, and I'm fading away once they start to be successful. When you feel the learner responding on their own, reduce prompting. Carefully attend to the child or adult's movements to learn when more intrusive prompts may be needed. And you guys know your VIPs better than anyone. You know when someone needs your help and when they're good to go. Any questions about graduated guidance? Does it make sense? I feel like you guys are already great with that. All right. Stimulus prompts. So what's a stimulus prompt? Well, a stimulus prompt is there's two types. Well, number one, we need to think about they're easier to fade. So many times that we want to default to stimulus prompts if possible because they're easier to fade than response prompting. And probably because that exact reason, Deanna, that people aren't all on the same page, right? And people are doing more intrusive prompts some of the time, and other people are doing less intrusive prompts other times, right? So it's very hard to get everyone on the same page about what prompts levels we're on. So stimulus prompts might be the way to go in some occasions. And there's two types of stimulus prompts. And stimulus prompts are just something I add to the environment that's not going to be someone else's behavior like a response prompt is. A position prompt is one of the two things that we're going to be talking about today. There's more than these, but these are the two we're going to talk about today. Place the correct choice closer to the client. So maybe we're doing flashcards and we're like, pick up green, and they're not really doing it. What can I do using a positional prompt when I represent that idea? Move it closer to the VIP, right? None of this is rocket science, guys. I'm going to move that item closer to the VIP. And then I'm going to represent pick up green. With the positional prompt, I'm going to make it much more likely that they're going to pick up green and get the right response, right? How can I fade that, do you think? You could give them options. Someone else said something. Moving it back to the array, the natural array, right? So I'm slowly going to move it back to what it should be in the natural setting. What is a positional prompt that you guys might use to not forget something before you leave for work?
A Post-it.
Okay.
At the door that says, "Don't forget to take your water." I don't know.
Yeah, okay. You could put a Post-it. I like to just put, go ahead, you have it?
No.
I put my keys by my coffee and my drink so then I know I have to.
Yeah. What if you're like really gung-ho about going to the gym, right?
Put your gym bag at the door.
Yeah, put your gym bag right in the door. And what does that cause?
Don't forget.
Still forget it.
I forget my lunch every day.
Well, then those prompts aren't really prompts because that's not reliably generating the behavior. Yeah, you're going to move something in a way to help prompt your mind, right? Right?
Like putting the laundry basket where the person always puts their laundry on the floor. So you put the laundry basket there.
So we see you have experience with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
We do this downstairs with like the communication tablets. We try to make it so that they always either have it in their hand or right next to them.
Love it. Very nice. Very good.
Mine's bizarre. I have a clock next to my makeup stand that's a half an hour ahead. And if I'm late, and I'll be on time.
Good strategy.
Hey,
You need one for Andy.
hour ahead. We won't tell him, I promise. Andy does listen to this. Sorry, Andy.
No problem. So guys, the positional prompts can be very effective. We are teaching someone that about wearing a shirt front and back. To not put on their shirt backwards, I should say. And the way we did this is we put a fluorescent piece of tape in the back of their shirt where the tag should be. And what rule did we come up with? Tag goes in the back. So I kind of put this tape in the back, to a fluorescent piece of tape, to really draw their eyes to the back. And how would I fade that? What was it? Take the tape away. I could cut it to be smaller and smaller and smaller till it's faded away. Much easier to fade than our response prompting that we've talked a lot about, right? So I could use fluorescent tape's a big one in my mind. And I feel like, I feel like we've seen it so much, like in the auditorium when we gave when we had to do our school concerts. What did they put on the ground? Yeah, stand on the X, right? Stand here. These are all stimulus prompts that they're adding to the environment that reliably evoke behavior that they would like to see. And after a time, they could fade that X away, or I was thinking about with your name on it, the masking tape with your name on it, and they could slowly fade that away, because over time, you're going to know where to stand. After you've done it 5 or 6 times, you know your spot. You can fade away that tape. You don't need that tape anymore. So that's the same idea here, guys, right? We're going to slowly fade these stimulus prompts into oblivion. Assign Cs.
Where you put your name and then eventually you don't have your name tag there anymore.
Once the behavior starts to maintain, once we start to see these behaviors from our VIPs, we could fade away our prompts. And we hope these behaviors will maintain. That's the idea behind this. We want to generate these good behaviors, but we want to fade away our assistance once we do. And we have a redundancy prompt, which is another example. One or more stimulus or response dimensions, color, size, or shape are paired with the correct choice. So, and I always think about this one is I'm teaching money to someone. I'm teaching money. And what do bills look like? They're green, they're rectangle, there's an old dude on them, right? They all kind of look the same, right? We have a lot of experience with them, so we're masters at discriminating between them all. But to a VIP who's new to dealing with money, maybe they just got their first job, the bills they all look the same. There's all an old guy on it. They're all green. What is an important piece on the bill to show the number? So what might we do to that number? Make it bigger, right? We might go to the computer and take that $10 in the corner and make it huge. So we are altering the size. And what would I do and as I'm like, okay, we're going to identify bills. As this person starts accomplishing this task, what would I do to fade that? Make it smaller. Put it back. Thanks, Brandon. Move it back to what it normally is on the bill. Right? How about, and we gave an example for color as well, right? With our shirt example, where we kind of altered the color to make it more noticeable. How about a shape?
You can do them with different colors.
Make it bold.
Different colors.
Yeah, different colors
So they can.
to make it more like recognizable.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can put numbers on them, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you could use shape with coins, not so much bills, but like you could distinguish the size of coin first before introducing the monetary value.
Cool example. I like it a lot.
Put numbers in the shapes.
Sure. And I'm just thinking like, hey, we'll make the correct response real big, right? And make the other responses real small. Maybe this is like a card matching game we're doing, right? All right, I have an example of a stimulus prompt on the next page that I pulled from Cooper. And this is teaching someone to do subtraction. So what did they do in this example?
They darken them. Lighten them.
They darken them, yeah, right? And what did they do? What did they add? What stimuli did they add? Well, the numbers are kind of the natural.
The dots.
The dots?
Those are numbers.
I think they're numbers. There's under numbers in some of them.
Is there dots? There's numbers in the circle, in the head.
Yeah. Yeah, what are these things?
Oh, sorry.
Stick figures. And yeah, they did have the dots because they probably count the dots, right? But these are stick figure people, right? So what did they do? They have 7 minus 2. So they're like, why don't we use a stimulus prompt here to help teach this behavior? So at first we set up this subtraction problem to have people. And we have 5 people and 2 of them go on their own. 7 minus 2, right? And what did they do? As we keep representing this problem, what did they do? Exactly. And they're fading away this prompt. They're fading away as this person starts to learn the ideas about subtraction. They are taking this prompt and they're fading it away. If you guys remember from your school, or if you have young kids, you'll remember in our classes, what did they have when we learned letters? This one reminds me of it. Yeah, it was almost like an outline for us to follow at first. Same idea, right? We make a little outline for them, and over time, that's faded away for that child. As they learn it, as they learn how to make that A, they don't need this prompt anymore. They're able to write that A on their own. And that's the idea behind these stimulus prompts. Another example I saw, which was cool, was like they wanted to teach the word car. So this artist turned the word car into an actual car.
Seen that.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's like I was like, okay, that's brilliant, really smart. And that's how they were able to teach that person the word car. So I thought that was really cool. And what did they do to fade it? They slowly turned it back into the word car. Pretty cool.
When I stood and taught, I had animal plates, and they had their ears and stuff, and I would use cubes, and I would put them all in the separate ears, and then put them together to formulate like addition or subtraction, and then we faded away and just used the blocks.
Very cool. Love it. Very good. So stimulus prompting is way easier to fade. And guys, when I asked you guys how to fade these, you guys all had the right answer already. You guys already knew how to fade the stimulus prompts. They're much easier to fade than our response prompting. So if you can, default to these stimulus prompts. Get creative out there. Talk to your BSC about ways to put prompting in and fade them away. I think that's the last slide. Oh, this error correction procedure. So what if someone makes a mistake? And I had to be careful because there's a lot of ways we can do error correction.
Do not say no.
You could say no.
Not no.
Not no.
Watch the way you say that they made a mistake. And I want it to still be a positive learning experience without.
That's not right.
Try again.
So what happens to someone's morale, attitude, if we constantly are nitpicking their mistakes? They get mad. They get discouraged. What are we doing to our relationship with that person? We're ruining it. Yes, we are causing harm. And what is our idea here is that we want to generate an appropriate behavior so we can lead it to reinforcement. If someone constantly is making mistakes over and over and is being nitpicked and pointed out without any kind of correction, it's going to lead to all those bad outcomes that you guys just described to me. And we see it all the time. We get called into cases all the time, and we go into houses where the caregiver constantly is pointing out the mistakes of this person and their relationships in the gutter. And what do we see? Horrible behaviors most of the time. So what our number one strategy is, stop doing that. Stop doing that. We are not generating behaviors we like, and we are causing more harm than good. Go ahead.
Isn't this where you would do your 1-to-7 ratio?
Yeah. Yes, exactly right.
So for every one negative correction, there's 7 positive praises.
We want to make sure we have 7 positive statements for every 1 corrective statement we need to do. So if we are doing corrective statements, we need to make sure we're delivering 7 positive statements to outweigh that 1 negative, to help with this relationship. If we have a tough relationship with the VIP, it could be because we are pointing out a lot of mistakes without showing them the correct ways. Right? Use our prompting to correct their ways. So this is one way that I would do that. A mistake is made. Not the end of the world, you guys. Stuff happens all the time. Bad behaviors happen all the time. Not the end of the world. It's a chance for us to regroup and figure out how to do things better next time around. Not the end of the world.
That's why there's a pencil to erase.
I love that, Sil. So true. So true. That's why there's an eraser. Yeah, exactly. So the one way I like to do this is to break eye contact or hold up my hand to indicate an incorrect response. So I might hold out my hand, break eye contact to tell that person that that response isn't going to get my attention. And that is not a behavior that is okay, or whatever it may be. And what I might do here is increase my prompt level because I want them to be successful. So if I ask them to do it, if I try to model washing hands and they don't do it correctly, I might hold out my hand, break eye contact, wait a few moments, and then revisit it by increasing my prompt level. So now I'm going to move to a full physical prompt. And I'm going to make sure that I generate that behavior from this person so I could then lead it to reinforcement. We want our people to be successful. We don't want them to constantly keep making mistakes over and over again. How long will that go on before that person doesn't want to wash their hands anymore? Doesn't want to do important skills of their own because they can't do it right. They keep meeting failure. So what I do is I'm going to think, okay, I tried to model, it didn't work. I'm going to break eye contact, hold out my hand. I'd love to see you guys on the floor holding out your hand like that. So everyone start doing it. And then revisit it with an increased prompt level where I'm going to come in and help that person maybe hand over hand. The idea is I want them to be successful. I want them to wash their hands. I want them to have an appropriate response. So I'm giving them a chance to do it with a less intrusive prompt. And if they don't do it, I'm going to move up my prompting level so I could guarantee an appropriate response. And then, of course, we're going to provide reinforcement for a job well done. And that should be a moderate reinforcement. You know, I shouldn't deliver my highest reinforcement after a more intrusive prompt is used. What I want you guys to take away from this is that 7-to-1 ratio. That if we are pointing out someone's mistakes nonstop, we aren't showing them a better way. We aren't showing them the way that it should be done. And it'll lead to frustration and damage our relationships in the end. We need to make sure we are prompting and it's getting the behaviors we like and then providing reinforcement on top of it to make sure we could see that behavior more often in the future and we're building a skill.
Within that 1-to-7 ratio, for those that have never done it, I always like to point out something they did right. Aside from some other positive statements, always at least tell them something they did right, even if it was something small. Make sure that's one of your positive statements.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm a job coach. So when we're at certain sites, I might have that down pat, but the employer doesn't. So, and they, in their minds, they're there to work for that employer. So everything that I'm using is not really working because they're going off of the reaction they're getting from the employer. So it's hard to reverse that.
It is. And that's one of the most challenging parts of our job. It's like we're all here to help our VIPs, and we could all like learn and improve. But when we have someone on the outside that we need to kind of connect with, that's a hard task to do, right? And that's why it takes a certain team members to be able to do that. And that's why you guys are all here on RVL's team, because you guys have that ability. You guys have the ability to connect with people. And that's my advice to you, is to first develop a relationship with these managers. Tell them who you're all about. Become friends with them. Become friendly with them, I should say, so that you can give them advice in the future about how they could. And think about this isn't just important for VIPs. This is important for all their employees. This is an important lesson in psychology for everyone. They could be a better manager by implementing this 7-to-1 principle, right? And we try to do the same thing at Reaching Beyond Limits, right? We do the same exact thing. We try to dish out 7-to-1 reinforcement. We don't want to constantly be talking to people about poor performance, which we rarely have to do, because we are we're encouraging good behavior 7 times more often, right? So we rarely have to have those negative conversations.
Well, you know who I'm going to say, but yeah, that's hard. I'm always feeling positive that day for 4 hours. I'm like, oh, here we go. Keep going.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, right? But that's who we need to be. And that's who, and we know that's going to make our jobs easier. And I know that's a difficult job to do. And we go into houses as BSCs all the time and are faced with that exact problem, right? Right, guys? And the first step in all of this is to develop a therapeutic relationship with these people, and work on goals that are important to them. I might ask that manager, hey, like what's important that we help teach Tommy? I don't know, I'm just making up a name. What would be important to teach Tommy about this job that you would find important? And then we work on that. The manager might tell us what is something important, and then we'll work on that, and then we get the manager's buy-in that way. And then we could be like, hey, try this and try that. And that could be a good approach to helping facilitate that relationship and getting your point across. So give that a try. Any other examples? I love that. Okay, that is it. What is the lesson for today, guys? What did we learn from this training? What is it? Keep trying. Yeah. Keep trying. Keep showing up every day. Keep giving it your best. What are prompts? They're temporary, but what are they? To assist. Yeah, to fade. They're temporary, and they are tools that we should use to assist, that we should only use temporarily. What do they reliably do? What was it? We need to reinforce behavior, the appropriate behavior, of course. Teach behaviors that we want to see. What does the prompt reliably do? It teaches the task, but what it does is reliably generates the behavior from our VIPs. So if we give a verbal prompt, we are seeing that behavior in action from our VIPs. That is the prompt. If it doesn't reliably generate that behavior, it's not a prompt, and we need to refocus what we're doing. Prompts should be faded, like we said. Using one of these 4 methods, we should think about fading our prompts. Most to least, least to most, graduated guidance, time delay. Any one of these methods could be used to fade our prompts away as our VIPs become more independent. And what do we do with reinforcement when we're fading prompts? Yes, higher reinforcement, higher quality of reinforcement for a more independent response. And that's comes so naturally. When we see our VIPs accomplish something more independently, we're jumping to the moon for them. We're so thrilled for them. Like, we do this automatically. But that's kind of the magic in this, right? Because we're making a behavior with prompts easier to accomplish. we need to make sure we provide a lot of reinforcement on the tail end for a more independent response. You guys have any questions for me before we part ways today? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. I hope you guys learned something, and let me know if you have any questions.